Hi, guys, and thanks so much for joining me on the channel today. I'm Ted Yacucci. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. This presentation today kind of was initiated when someone recently who I just met found out that I was interested in the JFK assassination and asked me just some general questions about it. And this person said, "Well, how do you know really that it was a conspiracy?" And of course, the answer yet you want to give is like, "Well, because I spent 40 years or looking into this, and I've got 100 videos that will hopefully let you know at least what my thoughts are." But the truth is that a lot of Americans, and especially younger Americans, who weren't around with the JFK assassination, of course they don't spend, everybody has lives and they don't spend the time with it. Of course, that those are us that are really interested in it, especially as a niche uh, topic of interest. So, what I thought I would do today is just try to do my best to accept that challenge and just produce a video today that I would give, my top reasons that I hope to convince you or anyone else that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy. So that's what I'm going to do on the video today. All right, just a couple of things. First of all, again, as we get close to, we're only a couple of days away from Christmas 2025 as I record this. So I just want to wish everybody a very, very blessed and Merry Christmas. I'd like to thank you all for being subscribers and tuning into the channel. And I have some information. I've decided to start a second channel. So I've done that, and I'm going to call it or I have called it the Cool Topics channel. And the reason for that is that our channel here, we want to keep the focus where it is, and we do really serious subjects with the JFK assassination. But I wanted to have a channel where we could kind of, have some fun and look into everything else in life. And that includes everything from health and science and travel and the paranormal and all the stuff that I think is just really cool and fun. So that's going to be the Cool Topics channel. I only have one video up right now. I decided to do one video on something really general. So I did the top five UFO sightings in America. So if you want to go over and watch that, that is available. I'm going to be putting a lot more content on there very shortly, and I hope to be able to, to build that channel along with the Ted Yacucci channel that you're on now, where we really deal with much, much more serious topics. So I hope if you do go over to that, the one thing that I would ask is that you hit that subscribe button over there, because you have to get to X amount of thousand subscribers before you really get in the YouTube algorithm and get your videos kind of shared, as widely as you really need them to be in order to have a successful channel. So if you wouldn't mind hitting subscribe when you do go over, or if you do go over to the Cool Topics channel, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so let's get into our topic today with JFK. I'm going to pretend that somebody like happened to me very recently said, "Well, prove to me really quickly that the JFK assassination wasn't one crazy lone nut guy in the Texas School Book Depository, but was an act of conspiracy among intelligence agencies and the mafia and some industrialists and other people. Prove that to me." All right, challenge accepted. Here's the very first thing that I am going to present to them. Okay, so when it comes to proof of conspiracy in the JFK assassination, the first thing that we want to show is not going to be the magic bullet. It's not going to be the Lee Oswald imposters. It's not going to be the 482 things that Ruth Paine did to throw shade and guilt on Lee Oswald. No, it's going to be what we can see with our own eyes. And that all comes down to the dark complected man who was in Dealey Plaza standing right next to the Stemmons freeway sign along with the umbrella man. And what do we see the dark complected man doing? We see him talking on a military grade radio, and the umbrella man is looking right at him. The umbrella man will later say that he doesn't remember even seeing the dark complected man near him after the shots. Ridiculous. But the dark complected man, he is speaking to someone. Now, look in the back of his jacket here as he's sitting there. We can see that he has communications equipment underneath his jacket that's bulging out. And it's even easier to see as he walks away toward the grassy knoll when he finally did get up from the curb. And here we can easily see how he has hidden communication equipment, that radio that he was just speaking on as part of that equipment under his jacket as he walks away. That is visual proof that someone was coordinating the shots in Dealey Plaza on President Kennedy's motorcade. Okay, so we have the dark complected man. We have visual proof of him on a military grade radio speaking to someone just after the shots were fired. And that is right after he was seen thrusting his hand up and down, in my opinion, as a signal to the shooting teams while the assassination was taking place. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you may have seen my video where I concentrate on who I think that whole communications command center or how it was focused, starting with CIA Station Chief William K. Harvey, who came over from Rome to Dallas in the early days of November. I believe that he coordinated, set up the communications command center through Collins Radio just north of Dallas. They certainly had local communications folks in Dealey Plaza and what would have had to been repeaters, things that strengthened the signal in order to get it the few miles up to Collins Radio and then out from there. But the point is that this is visual proof. This is visual proof of someone on a military, not a walkie, a military grade radio. This is someone talking to the communication teams, coordinating the actual murder. And we know that Lee Bowers, the supervisor of the railroad yards who was in the tower, we know that he saw a car, one of three cars, in the half hour before the assassination. And we know he saw the driver talking on a radio as he cruised slowly right behind the grassy knoll, the fence on the grassy knoll, as he drove through the parking lot there. So this is real proof. I have never heard one person in my entire life give me an explanation on what that guy was doing on that military grade radio if he was not talking to the coordinating teams as part of the assassination. And the guy sitting next to him, Louis Stephen Witt. It should be Louis Stephen. I never told the truth in my life. Witt, that should be his name, because when he appeared before the Congressional Committee 15 years later, and I've done a video on this, you may have seen it, he actually had the gall to say that even though he lived in Dallas all his life, or right near Dallas all his life, he worked just blocks from Dealey Plaza. And he said that he had never heard of the Umbrella Man until he got a request to come before the Congressional Committee. Absolutely ridiculous. And who is it that's sitting next to each other on that curb when everybody else is pretty much gone? It's those two, dark complected man, umbrella man, who are seen signaling during the assassination. Visual proof. That's number one. Number two, the actions of Jack Ruby and the death of Lee Oswald by gunshot in the basement of the Dallas City Jail less than 2 full days after the JFK assassination. Jack Ruby spent almost the entire weekend either in the Dallas City Jail trying to get next to Lee Oswald or spending time contacting both Dallas police and the FBI, trying to tell them, to warn them that Oswald would be killed if he was transferred on the schedule that was provided Sunday morning from the city jail to the county jail. Jack Ruby was given the assignment to murder Lee Oswald. Why? Because the conspirators were out of their mind with worry. Lee Oswald, of course, was supposed to be killed the day of the assassination. When he wasn't, by the time Henry Wade's press conference was conducted on Friday night about midnight, and there's Jack Ruby acting as a reporter and actually providing information about the Fair Play for Cuba Committee to District Attorney Wade. Well, at that point, Lee Oswald had to realize that he was seriously the patsy. Now, he was an intelligence asset. He was working for the FBI as an informant. We all know that. He was working, I believe, for ONI. He did not, up until that point, he was very successful. I believe Lee Oswald was the man who saved President Kennedy in Chicago by being the informant. He was a very, very successful undercover agent for intelligence. What an asset. So I don't think he was anxious to give that up. And I think that's the reason that he looks so perplexed when he's told that he is being charged with the murder of the president along with Officer Tippit. So what does that mean for the conspirators? It means that all of a sudden their cover is blown. Their guilt in the conspiracy is blown. You know, Lee Oswald is going to immediately start talking, and he's going to really go ahead and blow up the whole conspiracy as he knows it. And a lot of people are going to be in a whole lot of trouble. And that's why Jack Ruby, gun runner Jack Ruby, mobster Jack Ruby, intelligence asset in the sense that they had used him before, that Jack Ruby was ordered to kill Lee Oswald. And where? In the basement of the Dallas City Jail. Maybe the place that Oswald should have been safest in the whole world. That's number two. Number three has to be the rifle that was found on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. That gun was identified as a 7.65 Mauser bolt action rifle. It was even specified as such by Deputy Eugene Boone, by Constable Seymour Weitzman, and by Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig, who all did affidavits saying that they clearly saw the Mauser stamp made in Germany stamp on the barrel of the rifle. So how did it all of a sudden become a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano?
And Captain Fritz was holding the rifle up in the air, and I was standing next to Weitzman, who was standing next to Fritz, and we weren't any more than 6 or 8 inches from the rifle, and stamped right on the barrel of the rifle was 7.65 Mauser. And that's when Weitzman said it is a Mauser and pointed to the 7.65 Mauser stamp on the barrel.
And at least as important is, why did not the Warren Commission ever ask either Seymour Weitzman, Roger Craig, or Eugene Boone the direct question: was the rifle that you found and examined that day, was it a Mauser or not? The Warren Commission never asked the question to them, even though they had the affidavits right in front of them. Well, we know, and if you watch my videos, you know that that happened because of Lieutenant J.C. Day. Lieutenant Day took the Mauser back to robbery and homicide, and from there it was just his words that miraculously changed that rifle, that three officers at least, there may have been more that we don't know about, created affidavits saying that they saw it was a Mauser. Every newscaster in America was broadcasting that it was a Mauser. Now, remember who Lieutenant J.C. Day was. He was a guy that after he dusted the rifle for prints and couldn't find any, and then that rifle was sent off to the FBI lab in Washington, the best lab in the world for identifying fingerprints and other artifacts. They found no fingerprints, and they certainly didn't find a palm print or any indication that a palm print had ever existed, and they sent the rifle back to Dallas. Well, what happened then? Lieutenant Day had that rifle taken to the mortician as Lee Oswald was waiting to be buried on Monday morning, all Sunday night. And we know that because of, thank God, because of interviews recorded from the mortician, from the funeral home. We know that the FBI went in there and took Lee Oswald's palm print that day, that night, overnight, before he was buried. After that, Lieutenant Day comes and says that, oh, he had this palm print all the time. Well, it's patently ridiculous. It's absolutely patently ridiculous. So that's got to be number three. The fact that the rifle found on the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository was clearly identified as a 7.65 Mauser and not a 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano. Next, number four, and this is just so massive, is the fact that every doctor, every surgeon, every nurse, every medical attendant at Parkland Hospital who examined or worked on President John Kennedy identified a massive head wound in the back of President Kennedy's head. These include preeminent doctors. From top left here is shown Dr. Charles Carrico, Dr. Marion Jenkins, Dr. Ron Jones, Dr. Paul Peters, Dr. Richard Delaney, Dr. Kenneth Salyer, Dr. Charles Crenshaw, and Dr. Robert McClellan. Everyone, every surgeon, every doctor, every nurse, every medical attendant, everybody says there was a massive head wound in the occipital parietal region, the back of President Kennedy's head. Now I ask you, how could that wound all of a sudden just simply disappear? And why would two doctors who had never done an autopsy of gunshot wounds be chosen to do the autopsy of the President of the United States when there were so many preeminent surgeons and autopsy doctors available in the Washington, D.C. area? It was because the murder was being covered up And the conspirators, of course, wanted everybody to believe their bogus story about one lone shooter shooting President Kennedy from the rear. And number five, and I know that most people probably wouldn't consider this as an item in obvious proof of conspiracy in the death of JFK, but I do. And that is the wiretap that was conducted on the Payne household 31 minutes after the shots rang out in Dealey Plaza. At exactly 1 p.m., an FBI wiretap on the Payne's household captured Michael Payne calling Ruth Payne, his supposedly estranged wife, and he called from his work at Bell Helicopter. And of course, this is before Lee Oswald was ever identified as a suspect in the JFK assassination. This was before Officer Tippit was killed at 10th and Patton Streets. This was before Lee Oswald went to the Texas Theater. And what he said, what was recorded on the wiretap, not an overheard telephone call, a wiretap. What was heard was Michael Payne telling Ruth Payne that Lee Oswald will be blamed for the death of President Kennedy, but they both knew who was really responsible. And of course, both Ruth and Michael Payne were intelligence assets. And I've proven many, many, many times, I think, over the last couple of years of how involved both they and their whole families were in intelligence and especially the CIA. And of course, Ruth Payne had spent a week to 2 weeks with her sister, who was a psychologist in the CIA in Washington, and she had worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence before that. Ruth spent 2 weeks or so with Sylvia Hoke, her sister, in Washington immediately before leaving to pick up Marina Oswald in New Orleans. So I think that the fact that that wiretap happened is great proof that though the Paynes knew that there was something happening, that they were setting up Lee Oswald for something, but they probably really didn't know that it was for an actual assassination. Or maybe they did. I wouldn't put anything past them, really. And I think if we use those five examples, at least we have a darn good starting point for convincing anyone who didn't know a lot about the JFK assassination that it really was an act of conspiracy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Again, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the channel and being with me, and especially those of you that leave comments. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out my new channel, the Cool Topics channel, and make sure you subscribe over there. I really would also appreciate that. I'll see you next time.